Since the regular season is over, I thought let me talk about some role players that had interesting comebacks or just interesting seasons in general from their previous teams. One of them isn't exactly a redemption story, but what this player is doing this season, I had to talk about it. In the early parts of his NBA career, you knew Cameron Payne as the guy who danced with Russell Westbrook before games, not because of his quality point guard minutes. He was drafted 14th overall in 2015 and was legitimately one of the worst players that got minutes in the league. He looked out of place almost all the time. He was an inefficient scorer from almost everywhere on the court. He wasn't someone who was a reliable passer, and he was not good on defense. He did show some creativity with his dribble at times, and when you combine that with his draft position, teams were going to give him a chance. But soon he would find his way out of the NBA. He made stops in Chicago for 2 seasons, and he was with both the Cavs and the Raptors in 2019 before getting cut. There weren't any NBA teams looking to pick up Cameron Payne after the Raptors got rid of him, so he went to China for 2 months, and then 2 months later, he came back to America to play in the G League, where he led his team in assists and points. This is where he learned how to be a leader on the court. Cam Payne said this about his G League run: "I was big on making sure the team was good. I was the Chris Paul of my G League team, coaching everybody up, trying to make sure we win every game." But even with those numbers, point guard might be the most competitive position in the league, so if he never made a comeback to an NBA team, it wouldn't have been a shock. But that's not what happened. In the year 2021, Cam Payne is now one of the most important bench players on what was almost the #1 seed in the West, which is kind of crazy when you consider how bad he was in the past, but it's not like this was out of nowhere. He was pretty good in the bubble last year with the Phoenix Suns. It was this season that proved the bubble wasn't just a fluke of games where he got going. The games in the G League and in China really helped him. He's actually crazy efficient with the 3-point shot, he takes care of the ball, and he's not making the dumb mistakes he did in the past. I mean, that's the easiest way to stay on the court. Don't turn the ball over and defend. This is one of the better comeback stories of the last few years, to be honest. It needs to be talked about more. He was not a good player just 2 years ago, and now this summer is his free agency, and he's going to get a pretty good contract. Nerlens Noel has had 2 really solid seasons now and showed he can still be productive. We saw this when he was with the Thunder, but with the Knicks this year, this is what people thought he could be on defense coming out of the draft. It's been a good year for the team. The Knicks have home court in the first round of the playoffs. Tom Thibodeau is getting Coach of the Year love. RJ Barrett is getting a lot of credit for his second-year improvement. Julius Randle is going to win Most Improved Player. All of those stories have been talked about a bit more than Nerlens Noel anchoring the Knicks defense. When Mitchell Robinson went out with a season-ending foot injury, there were a lot of questions about the Knicks' center depth at that point. They had options, but all of those options would have been overextending from the usual minutes they got in the past. But Noel doesn't look out of place playing more minutes and starting lineup minutes. The Knicks right now are a total team defensive effort, but when you're focusing in on 1 or 2 guys, Noel has to be in that conversation. And that's crazy because he was considered a massive disappointment at one stage of his career, then became a backup, and now is a starter on one of the toughest teams to score on in the league. The way he gets blocks is kind of nuts too, because it's weirdly violent and sometimes he's like a half a second late, but he gets up fast enough to block it. And not to mention, he's up for a new contract this summer, and someone is going to give him a long-term deal. When you look back at his career, this year with the Knicks is the one where people are going to say, okay, this is where things really started to change for Nerlens Noel. I've talked about Reggie Jackson recently in a video about his time with the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I briefly mentioned that he's playing pretty well with the Clippers. He's made a huge comeback since the last few years. The same Detroit Pistons that gave Jackson an $80 million contract about 6 years ago eventually bought him out of his contract in February of 2020. Things happen in the NBA, guys fall off, guys get better, but the Pistons' years were supposed to move Reggie Jackson into a new phase of his career, a starting point guard and possibly an all-star, but that didn't happen. By the end of his Detroit run, he dealt with injuries, and it was clear over the last couple of seasons that he is not ready to be a lead guard. The Clippers eventually signed him for backcourt depth when the Pistons got rid of him. That last year in Detroit for Reggie was pretty rough because he dealt with knee tendonitis, a sprained thumb, an ankle injury, and a back injury that forced him to sit out 42 games. But with the Clippers, he's not dealing with those nagging injuries and is easily playing the best winning basketball of his career. When Patrick Beverley was missing time with his injury this past January, Jackson was the starter and he fit right in with the team. This was the turning point for him. His decision making and 3-point shooting kept him in the lineup even when the Clippers got healthy a little bit there. You know, he was known as this chucker and mostly a mediocre 34% three-point shooter, but now he's making 43% of his threes this season with the Clippers. He's a lot more mature and is playing like a reliable backup guard. I know they have Patrick Beverley and Rajon Rondo, but I wouldn't be shocked to see if Reggie Jackson is that fifth guy in certain moments of games in the playoffs because of his shooting. If you've been an NBA fan for some time now, you know Jeff Green dealt with a heart condition earlier in his career and that he was able to come back from it, but I want to mention him in this video because this guy's about to be 35 years old, and from a shooting efficiency standpoint, he's having the best year of his career. Every time I turn on a Nets game, this man is dunking right on top of people. Like, I don't even understand how this man still gets up like this. Some of these dunks look like Aaron Gordon. Here's a stat I found looking around on NBA.com. In the 2017 season with the Washington Wizards, Jeff Green finished the season with 10 dunks. This season with the Nets, he has 39 dunks, 39. Usually when you get older, and especially when you're a role player for your entire career, you're not really attacking the paint with the same force you had when you were just getting into the league. No, he's still really going at guys. This technically isn't a redemption story, but at 35, to still be able to have hops like this, it's still pretty cool. I want to mention it. Over the first couple of months of Jordan Poole's rookie season with the Golden State Warriors, all you heard pretty much the entire year was how he was a bust because his shooting percentage was one of the league's worst for guys that actually got minutes. Poole is someone who was drafted for his ability to score in an off-the-bench role, but he looked really bad last year, and even in parts of this year he wasn't that great. He got sent to the G League twice. There was a lot of pressure for the Warriors front office to nail this pick a few years ago because they didn't have much flexibility to make other roster moves. But in the second half of this season, Poole is doing what people thought he could do before the draft. He's putting up 12 points. He went from shooting 33% in his rookie year to 43% in his second year. The big thing for him is that he's able to make defenses pay when teams are hyper-focused on stopping Steph Curry. In his rookie season, Poole shot just below 30% on his catch-and-shoot threes and is now up to 38% in his second year. Steph Curry might have been the best player during this regular season, and he is why they are able to make it to the 8th seed, but Jordan Poole is a part of that too. He was making big shots this year, and especially this last month against some of the better teams in the West. Jordan Poole just had an ankle tweak a few days ago, and if he missed any time, the Warriors would have been in serious trouble for non-Steph scoring options. I know Jordan Poole is a second-year guy, and you don't want to write him off for anything. This might have just been 2 really good months, but it's worth mentioning that he's redeeming himself this season. Plus, when you factor in the amount of pressure the Warriors front office has at the moment to put a good roster around Curry, it's big if Poole is playing well. The last player on here is Tony Snell, and look, I know Tony Snell has been an NBA rotation player for a while now, and he didn't have a fall off like Payne or something. He's had seasons with Milwaukee and Detroit where he played fine, but there's a reason I have him on here. Tony Snell is the first player in NBA history to have a 50-50-100 season, meaning 50% from the field, 50% from the three-point line, and 100% from the foul line. I'm just going to pretend this Tony Snell 0.0 rebound stat graphic doesn't exist anymore. I've made jokes before about a player putting up a Roy Hibbert or a Tony Snell 0-point stat line, but I'm not going to do that anymore. The 50-50-100 is the only Snell graphic I'm going to post about. And that's it for me. I just wanted to talk about some role players that I've been watching this season. My next video might be on Jimmy Butler, so let me know how you're feeling about this video down in the comments. And if you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like as it does help the channel do better, and consider subscribing if you want to see more from me.